my mum was from the Windrush generation. She came here as an unaccompanied minor, probably about age 11 or 12. She ended up having 9 children, was a single parent for most of that time. And she just talked about reading. She didn't even know why we should be reading. She just kept saying, read. And so I read. We weren't allowed out. We didn't go anywhere. We were told that if we didn't read, there'd be no way out. And we didn't know way out from where or for. I'm getting quite emotional because I remember the times going to my local library in Catford, which was a very white area at that time. We were the only black family in our school. It's a multicultural area now, but it was completely different in the 80s. And going to my local library and requesting books that he'd never even heard of, but he was such a lovely man and he just kept looking for them. The biography of Frederick Douglass and looking for the Maya Angelou books. And as I read a book, at the end, they would recommend another book. And that's how I knew about them, because we didn't have the internet. My mum didn't know which books for us to read. And then that went on to the love of reading history. And I remember reading about China and colonialism and Africa. And I kept reading and reading all the way through to getting a PhD. I did not stop reading until I got a PhD. And then I went to
why did you stop reading when you got a PhD?
I meant reading for fun.
I know you did.
You stop reading for fun. Now I read a lot, but not for fun.
Yes, right.
And I went on, and then it was then that I was like, okay, so what do I do with this? I understood it as I got older, because I went to a very lower working class white school on an estate in South London, who were my great friends in primary school, and then in secondary school all of a sudden became really racist. I just didn't understand it. And then it was the NF, and we're having to be escorted to our bus stops, and people were calling us all kinds of names, and these were friends that I knew from when I was 5 years old in nursery school. And all of a sudden,
what happened to them? Sorry, I know I'm here for your story, but briefly, what do you think? Because you must have given it some thought. What happened to them, Tania?
I know what happened to them. There was a huge spike in teenage pregnancies at 14, 15 in my area amongst my white girlfriends. The boys went into trades. No one was interested in education. In fact, I remember my best mate at the time saying, my dad said, I'm going to give me £2 for every C and £3 for every B and £4 for every A. And I remember thinking, wow, if I came to my mum without straight A's, I don't even want to say on radio what would happen to me. So... And I remember at the end, I said, saying to him, how much money did you get? And he said, I didn't get any because I just got used. Oh, and that was the last time I saw them. And I don't mean that in a... our lives...
Different paths.
I feel like it sounds dramatic, but I had to run. I thought, I need to educate myself and get out of this environment as quickly as I can. But I come full circle now, and I have got out of that environment, and I'm living very well, and I'm married, and I have 2 young girls. But then my youngest girl is going into secondary school, and she's lovely, and she's bright, and she's bubbly, and she's got great girlfriends and boyfriends, and they have great fun, and they're on TikTok, and she's homeschooling, she's doing really well. And my fear is that all of those girls are going to turn on you. Not all of them, but you're going to start seeing what I've been telling you you're going to see since you were 4 or 5, because I'm much more equipped.
Have you? You have told
I'm much more equipped than my mum was. I have more time.
Yeah.
I'm not a single parent. I've got a supporting husband, a black husband that gets it, and that's why we're together. And we talk about it all the time. We're not trying to scare them. We're just trying to make them aware that it's going to be different for you. And look, mummy's got a PhD, and she still struggles every day in the workplace. People still replace me with the name of the cleaner, even though I've got a suit on, and I'm 6 foot tall, and she's 4'1", and I'm a size 12, and she's a size 18, and I'm dark-skinned, and she's fair-skinned. I'm still replaced by the cleaner because I'm almost invisible. And that's not for everyone, but that's how it is. And how am I going to tell my bright, bubbly young girl that I've got to dampen your flame? I don't want to dampen your flame. She wants to be an actress. You need to shine bright if you want to battle through that, what I can only imagine must be fiercely competitive industry. Yes. So how do I dampen your flame? So what do? I make sure we don't holiday in the Algarve. I take them to Africa on holiday. I make sure that their books are filled, their bookcases, not just filled with the literature at school, but I've literally combed the earth looking for images of black children in books. I've tried to build their self-esteem, and I feel like that is more educational than any national curriculum I could ever follow. In fact, homeschooling has been brilliant because I've been able to give them more time, more of that. Yes, you can learn your timetables. You can learn your timetables at 15, but you'll only get this time has been beautiful, this lockdown period, as stressful as it's been, because where we can explore that and really think about how am I going to equip these girls when they go out there and they face this. I've worked in America. I rushed home and I pursued my career in the UK because I couldn't handle it. The segregation, I could not handle, and I was in Manhattan. So this is not the deep, dark South. And in fact, as you rise up to upper echelons of society, as we would say, and you're getting more successful in your career, it's so sinister, it's so deep, you can't even call it out. And the stress of not being able to call it out is sometimes worse than the man that just calls you the N-word walking down the street.
Yes.
I can handle that much easier.
That makes sense.
My husband will say the same thing.
Yeah.
He has, on an everyday basis, my husband's 6'4", gentle giant, has people, even now, as a nearly 50-year-old man with grey hair, people crossing the streets when he's walking down the streets. I have a nephew of 14 who's 6'1", who doesn't live in London, and when he comes to visit, I make sure he doesn't go to the town centre without my daughters as escorts, because I know that he will be looked at and followed around shops, and the girls will kind of dumb down that aggressive look that he so-called has in society.
Yeah, I understand. They become
my sister, I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place. My sister called me this week in tears because her little boy's at home. Her 14-year-old, yes, I don't care if he's 6'1", he's her little boy.
Yes.
And he's loving football in the garden. Like every boy, kicks it over the fence. And her neighbour doesn't knock on the door and say anything to my sister, but says to him over the fence, knock it over here again and I'll call the police. I'll call the police. And my sister's calling me in tears. How do I cope? I don't know. We keep talking to... I don't want to say his name. We keep talking to him, talking to our children. And also, the flip side is I've got such an array of friends who get it and understand it. They don't walk in the same shoes. But the fact that I have that open dialogue, and I'm so lucky, I went to a great university and met people from all over the world, and we can have this open dialogue, and they're in my home, and they all look different, and they can all speak, and that helps as well. That I can say, look, we're not hiding, we're talking, we're sharing.
And if I describe your daughters as being lucky because of what they have, that's such an inappropriate word to use, isn't it? Because
it is inappropriate.
I should be comparing them. I should be comparing them to my daughters, not to the black daughters of somebody less educated than you, or less enlightened than you, or less secure than you.
But that would be setting them up for failure. My mum always said, "You don't window shop; it leads to shoplifting." And
I want to ask you a question, and I want to explain why I'm going to ask it. All right, because it's not just words with me. I hope people understand that. When I say that, I honestly believe most people, maybe even your neighbour, your nephew's neighbour, can be helped to the light, can be shown the right way, can be just brought into a more humanitarian space. So people listening to this who need that sort of help, they will have
I can give you an example.
No, hang on. I need to get this out. I need to get this out. Sorry. The point at which the neighbour said, I'll call the police. A lot of people listening to this who aren't, lost, they will have gone, well, I had an obnoxious neighbour as well. How do you know it's because he's black? How do you know it's because your nephew is black that the neighbour said that? And I'm going to ask you that question on their behalf, if I may.
Because my sister, when she said to him, why would you threaten the police on my son who's 14? He said to her, well, he is quite, and I quote, well, he is quite intimidating, isn't he? And she said to him, I'm the only black family on this entire road of over 200 houses. I've moved here from London. Do you not think that if anyone should be intimidated, it's me?
Well, I asked. And
he did not reply.
No. I know how he feels.
And that is that feeling of somehow this one family is somehow coming there to tear up your existence. Also, there is an arrogance that how dare you, my sister's only 14, he was a man in his 60s. How can you even afford to live next to me?
Yes, I can see that as well, of course.
And these aren't...
Of course.
People say if someone says you've got a chip on your shoulder or all lives matter, it's to shut you down. And that's another thing I tell my children. There's nothing more freeing mentally than to be able to talk. Talking therapy is the best therapy ever.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here, just to listen to people.
And you need to make friends that allow you to talk freely. It doesn't. I don't care what colour they are, what their backgrounds, they need to be able to hear you and you need to be able to hear them. And if they won't let you speak, then they're not the people that should be your friends. And that's why I tell my children going into secondary school, if you are not clear or you're not happy about how you're being treated, then if you can't speak, I'll speak for you. But I need you to practice, because this isn't going anywhere.
Do you know, it's so funny. I was rereading Akala at the weekend and his book Natives, when he and thinking back to when I interviewed him, and he was talking about the first time he got stopped. He was your nephew's age, and he went home to his mum. And this was the bit where I realised that we inhabited the same country but different planets, because he went home to his mum and he didn't even tell her. Stopped and searched by the police for the first time. He grew up in Kentish Town, and they said, "You're from Tottenham, right?" Because there was a lot of gang trouble in Tottenham at the time. And he didn't even tell his mum. And I didn't understand why that discomforted me, Tania. I didn't understand until what you said, because it's very, very easy for me to say. I said, "Why didn't you tell your mum?" He goes, "Well, because she'd have marched down to the police station and she'd have been shouting the odds, and I didn't want that." But what you're saying is, you have to.
I sometimes I have a 14-year-old, and as she's getting older and more independent, she is trying to deal with stuff more herself. But because we talk, I start to hear things. You know, a non-uniform day, and she wore her hair out, and someone was singing at it because they said it looked like a microphone. Yeah. Because it's with an afro, and it looks like, you know, those old-fashioned microphones. I'd probably like, I don't know, like they use when it's windy or something. And she said it, and she chuckled. And I said, "Well, how does that make you feel that every time you wear your hair out, there has to be comments? Yeah, everyone else is wearing their hair out every day and just walk.
And when you do it once.
And you do it once because we've always got your hair plaited. But it's non-uniform day, so I'm like, go and live your life and put your afro out. And you're getting people singing behind you."
And then if it did actually somehow lead to a contravention of uniform rules, I remember hearing phone-ins like this when I first started at LBC. You'd be turning on your radio to hear people like me saying, "Well, those are the rules. Of course you should plait her hair every day. Of course you shouldn't have dreads. They're not allowed to have dreads." It is actually...
Well, then everyone should plait their hair every day.
I know. But I'm just pointing out how easy it is even for people
I understand what you're saying, but that would have been my response.
I know. I could listen to you all day, Tania.
I have to go to that school very regularly and kindly re-educate people and make them much more aware. Senior leadership teams all the time.
I suspect you're rather good at it.
I try my best because I'm their advocate.
Yeah.
And it's a collective. It takes a village to raise a child. My mum always said that. And it's a collective. I have young people in my family, and they're all dealing with all kinds of issues all the time, boys and girls. And it's no different to when I was growing up. It's just it's different in that we have social media, and there's recordings, and there's different policies, and there's different ways around it. But the foundation remains the same. And I've always said, until the curriculum is changed in this country, because I always say to my English friends and European friends, I know a hell of a lot about your history and you know nothing about mine.
It's a very good
Yet
point.
my history has made your history rich. Then why am I not included? Why do I pay into a society that writes policies that discriminate against me? I pay all my taxes, I pay my contributions, but I'm not represented. And yesterday I did listen to you, and I did listen to your response, and I was disappointed. And I'm so happy that you came back today and you addressed that, because I was disappointed, because I thought I've held you to a higher standard. But James, how did you fall into that? Don't you get it? We do need representation on television. We do need representation in the newspapers. I've trawled the world to try and get little reading books, because I understand the importance of when a 3-year-old opens a book and sees an image that looks like themselves.
Yes, of course.
I remember seeing Robert Winston doing a documentary, and he opened a book and showed a black man to children of all colours and races, and said there was a black man and a white man, and they said, which one's the bad man? And even the black kids pointed at the black man.
Oh, my Lord.
That's how important billboards are. It's these subliminal messages. When you're pushing your child in a pram, they start to be bombarded with images and messages. And I'm a scientist. I know how the nervous system works and how quickly it develops and when it fully develops. And I understand that all of this wiring is happening. And they say, show me the boy at 7, show me the man. It is the truth. You have a short period of time. Yes, children aren't born rated.
Out there,
but you need to get those messages out quickly. And that's all I want to leave it there. But I just wanted to say that.
Well, I'm so glad that you did. And I'm sorry I let you down yesterday.
You redeemed yourself today, thank you.
Well, it's a work in progress, Tania. That's all any of us ever are, but I think you're probably closer to completion than I will ever be. Thank you.